Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to this Tuesday night Redox talk. My name's Debra Carter and I'm here to share a breakthrough that can change your life. The ASEA products have been extremely beneficial in my life. Living in the tropics here in Townsville, had a lot of sun damage and had to have some things removed. And I used to use a harsh therapy or a paste, shall we say, that was very, very painful for my sun damage. Interestingly, I've had some cells leave my body since taking the liquid ASEA. You might be able to see cells appearing on my right rib. I used the serum on it for 6 weeks. It dried up and fell out, which was pretty cool. I got a photo of that one. It's happened twice. The other time was on my hand. And I've also loved seeing how it's benefited my grandchildren, particularly child number 3 who had a traumatic birth. We put it all over him. When Justin said, look, put it all over him, well, his whole nervous system calmed right down. And thankfully, with our 4th grandson, I asked my daughter-in-law if she wouldn't mind taking the Redox through the pregnancy, because Mother and Bub, it was a bit of a scary time for us with the 3rd pregnancy. And with the 4th pregnancy, it was absolutely brilliant, calm and relaxed a lot more, less heart issues that she typically has. And he's a healthy, bonny little boy. So I'm really loving the Redox for my family, and also share it in my clinic here as well. But tonight we have a special guest, Karen Tourpelund, who's going to share some Redox experiences. Her hubby Lars' end-of-life experience, plus some clients' experiences. Karen runs and owns the Salt Therapy North Queensland. So thank you for Karen for coming on, and welcome. So tonight, before we get started, I'll invite you to think about a few questions to get in touch with what you're looking for in your life. So having a think about this, do you have a health challenge or know of someone with a health challenge that needs help? Would you like to reduce the visible signs of aging? Do you need more energy to do what you love doing? Are you an athlete looking for improved performance? Are you looking for more time or for more money freedom and a better lifestyle? To live really well, we all need 2 basic things: a body that can do whatever you ask it to do, and enough money to ask it to do some great things. To have that body, you might be exercising, you might be watching your diet or taking nutritional supplements. You might be doing everything you can think of, or you might not be doing anything at all. Frustratingly, no matter what you do, as you age, your cells respond less effectively to all of these strategies. Your cells naturally begin to break down, producing energy less efficiently and repairing themselves more slowly. If your cells could be just a little more efficient, your exercise, nutrition, supplementation and everything else you could do would be more effective. You could be healthier, longer, and with less effort. Several years ago, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery. They identified molecules natively produced inside the body that help your cells repair and regenerate. Once discovered, years of research and development went into figuring out how to produce these molecules outside of the body so that they could be used as a nutritional supplement. The result is a molecular technology that helps your cells work better. And when your cells work better, everything works better. Your exercise and diet efforts become more productive. Nutritional supplementation works better. You feel better, you look better, and you sleep better. You have more energy. So now let's hear from our special guest. And Karen, thank you for coming. And I'd love to hear more about Lars's Redox experience, if you could share that with us.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important to share this story. I really, really do believe that a seer works, and I know that my husband did too. Yeah, so basically for approximately 9 years, he had this really severe inflammatory condition that affected all of his joints, and well, most of his joints anyway. He suffered extreme discomfort, and he 2 knee replacements, and quite often he would be bedridden, you know, for periods of time. Yeah. So he was on a lot of medications. He was on like endones, nasty chemotherapy drugs, steroids, all these anti-inflammatory things to try and cope with his condition. And eventually he was also on an IV treatment where he would go once a month for his treatment. Yeah, so he was taking a lot of stuff, and he still would have pain. You know, he would have periods of relief, but most of the time he was struggling with a lot of pain.
Right.
Yeah. So initially we actually only had access to the Renew gel because we didn't have the drink, and we didn't really apply the gel often enough, and to really, you know, he basically he wasn't really getting much relief from the gel initially. That was really due to the fact that I was actually in another team, because I came on board, you know, many years ago, and I was in another team, and I didn't actually get the training, the education, the support, really. So I didn't have the knowledge, and so that's why we weren't getting the results. But I sort of persisted with the gel because I knew, and I had read so many testimonials of people that were you know, getting results. So I knew that you were really active with the seer. So after a period of time, I decided to transfer over to your team, and got all the support and education. You were there for us, and yeah, so shortly after me moving over to your team, the actual ASEA drink, the liquid, became available in Australia, and my husband Lars started using that, and he was noticing a difference, you know. So yeah, but unfortunately his father passed away, and because of that we got off track, and the drink went by the way, and all the other supplements and anything else good that we were doing, yeah, for a while.
I think that might have been before I came into the picture, because I remember coming into the picture when there was a diagnosis, of a very serious diagnosis. Is that right?
Yes, and that particular diagnosis, he had rogue cells in his pancreas, which is quite a big diagnosis. And unfortunately the pancreas is very close to lots of other internal organs, and these rogue cells decided to migrate, and unfortunately they did actually, you know, get to his brain. But prior to that, he was, you know, once he had been diagnosed, we really upped you know, the ASEA, and our version of upping the ASEA was to go to half a bottle a day.
Yep.
It was quite hard for him to consume anything at that point, but he was determined to take the ASEA because he was noticing the difference. He was noticing less pain, less discomfort, I should say, and significantly, so that he was actually able to stop taking the endones and, you know, all those things that were helping relieve the discomfort. The ASEA enabled him to get rid of all of that, and, you know, so that was really huge. So he knew that the ASEA was making a difference.
Yeah.
So he continued to take it, even though lots of other things he couldn't take, or he wasn't interested in taking. The ASEA liquid he knew made a difference, and he kept on taking it. So yeah. Anyway, so eventually his condition did get to a stage where his brain was so swollen and he was unable to consume liquid. So we actually were giving him lots of the Renew gel, and yeah, we kind of lost our battle.
Yeah.
You know, in retrospect, and everything's fine in retrospect, you know, I really wish that we had valued the product a lot earlier in his treatment. I wish that we had taken more. I really feel he should have been on a bottle a day. And I really feel that, you know, started earlier, given him more, maybe possibly we would have had a better outcome. And the reason I say that is not only from the way he was feeling, but also his blood tests. He was in palliative care and very sick, and the doctors came in, and I said, well, how were his last blood tests? Because I knew we'd been, you know, really upping the ASEA, and I was hoping for, you know, a slight shift. And the doctor said to the other doctor, oh, well, you know, how are his liver tests? And she said, perfect. And this doctor, her head just swung around and looked at the other doctor, and she said, really? Like, you know, like she was astounded. You know, liver tests, perfect. He, you know, on the scans and everything, had cancer in his liver. He had rogue cells in his liver. And, you know, she was astounded that his blood tests were perfect. And also, right up to the very end, you know, they would constantly come in and take his oxygen levels, and 98%, 98%, 98% consistently, you know. So we knew that the ASEA was doing something, but we had really, we had just left it too late, basically. Yeah. And sadly, he passed away. Yeah.
That's amazing, Karen. And from memory, I think he'd been a smoker for many, many years as well. And to have that oxygen so high, just amazing.
Yeah. It was. Even the young nurse that was taking it all the time said, my oxygen levels, and I've never smoked, have never been that high, you know. So we knew that, you know, given more time, you know, we would have been able to make a difference. But, you know, once the swelling got in the brain, he couldn't swallow, we couldn't take liquid, and that was the end of that.
Yep. So this is basically sort of what you're wanting to share, is to give people advice. What advice would you give them if they're facing with a diagnosis?
So just based on our experience and just experience I've had with other people as well, I would, you know, for me, I tell people the more you take, the better the result. And I say, take as much as you can afford. You know, it really, topping up with the redox signaling molecules, you know, it definitely does make a difference if you can give yourself that little bit more, you know. And sadly, a lot of us do focus on how much it costs, but my personal experience is that, if you can do more, then do more.
Yeah.
And do it earlier.
Yes.
Don't leave it to the end. Don't do it as that last resort.
Exactly.
Because I had the ASEA in the clinic for many years, and like I said, I didn't value it. And when we really started really getting into it, it did make a difference, a significant difference. And I really wish that we had both, me encouraging him and him, taking that responsibility to take it. I really wish that we had, proceeded earlier.
Yeah. So it can be such a powerful thing that we have in our hands, isn't it?
It is, and that's why I am. My husband didn't make it, but I am more than happy to share this story because I really feel that people can benefit from this product. It's not a be-all, end-all. Nothing ever is. There's no one thing that does it all. You really need to still have your exercise, your sunshine, your fresh air, your sleep, your healthy diet. You need to do all those things. But this is just an amazing tool that you can add into that mix that makes actually a really, really big difference.
Yeah. And just on a local note, with all the floods we've had here in Townsville, the mould we're dealing with, this is antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral, this product.
Absolutely.
So upping the dose in those situations when our immune system might be a little more fragile is a really powerful thing.
Absolutely.
Looks like you're in your beautiful salt clinic, salt room.
Yeah.
There. Can you share a couple of client testimonials with us?
I can.
Or family or others, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my son, he works at a local takeaway place, and they have these, big hot plates, and they were doing the closing, end of day procedures, and usually they turn all the hot plates off and then they clean them, but this time they weren't turned off, so he put his whole palm of his hand on this hot plate, and you can imagine that was very, very painful. So he his co-worker closed up, and he came home, and it's like, mom, and yeah, so we sprayed the drink on his hand because it was too sore to touch, and the drink took all the burning out. I mean, we sprayed it again and again. It took the burning out, and then we were able to apply the gel. And I let him do it because he knew how much, pressure to put on. So he applied it again and again and again and again and again, and I'll keep on saying it again and again and again and again. We were determined to put as much on as we could before he went to bed. And the next day, there was virtually nothing, and the day after that, nothing. And, after a week, he had this, like, tiny little speck of, peeling, on his hand, and he was like, what's that? Like, because he'd like forgotten he got burnt,
Wow.
He was astounded, he said, Mum, what is that stuff? He thought he'd be off work for at least a week. It was huge. It was, and since then I've seen lots of testimonials, on the Renew with Redox site of people with burns that have had the same sort of, experience. And it was a miracle. That's what it felt like, at the time. Yep. And the only reason he let me put it all on was because, ages, or maybe a year previously, he had been sunburnt really badly, And so I had said, oh, let's do an experiment, you know, let's just do one arm and leave the other. And it made a huge difference, you know, and I reminded him of that. So he said, oh, okay, you know, when I said, let's put this stuff on, you know, teenagers, you know, what does mum know? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so he had a great result. I've also got another associate, you know, and she's elderly. She loves playing the recorder and has been a recorder teacher for a very long time, and she's still passionate about it, and she still teaches recorder. So her fingers were very arthritic, and I'd said to her, you know, try it, just give it a go. And after a week, only a week, she noticed a significant result in her fingers. And yeah, so she signed up. But yeah, so she was, you know, thrilled with her outcome because, you know, that was important to her, and she was able to continue doing that. Yeah, so she's now sharing that story.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So in my clinic, I have an adult salt room and a children's salt room. And so I get mums coming in with little kids with all sorts of things. But I had 2 different mums at different occasions come in with their babies who had, like, you know, infected eyes, and you know, all gunk and, you know, stuff coming out of the eyes. Anyway, I said to them, you know, try this stuff. And I got like a little bottle that I use for my bush flower essences, and I put the Asir in, and I said, look, you know, just pop some drops in their eyes, but do it as often as you can and see how you go. It won't hurt them, you know, and yeah, and it made, and they told me it made a big difference, you know, so they were really happy as well, you know. So
it's awesome.
Think of other things.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And I think when we were chatting, you mentioned that your stepmom had a viral, painful condition on her face. Yeah,
she did. She had this, not allowed to mention names, so she had this viral condition that affects your nerves, but it tracks the nerve and is extremely painful. And so she had it on her face, round near her eyes, and I gave her the gel, and she was applying it, and I said, just, you know, put it on again and again and again, like, you know, you don't need to put a lot on at once, but lots of little amounts regularly, you know. And she did that, and she said it took all the burning out, you know, so it made a big difference for her. Yeah, absolutely.
That's so fantastic. It's wonderful to be able to support others and bless and change other people's lives and empower them at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why, like, I'm happy to do this talk, you know, this evening, because people need to realise that it can make a big difference, but you need to be committed. I think that's the word I use anyway. You know, not to just use it once or twice and all that didn't work. You know, it is. I always ask my, you know, clients to get very familiar with the product, to educate themselves, and then come on board. You know, if they you know, like what they're reading and seeing, because you know, I do feel that. Personally, I feel that it's not something, you know, that you can just sort of use once, you know, and then say, well, that didn't work. You know, you do need to give it some time. Having said that, you know, like the story with my son, you know, that was huge.
Yes.
I think maybe my experience is, for anything chronic, you need to give it a lot of time. For anything acute, it works really, really.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your personal story as well as those of your clients.
I hope anyone who's listening today that, you know, you go do your homework and you don't just sort of brush this away as some you know, just another
fad.
scam or scheme or whatever, multi-level marketing, whatever. You know, I just really, really want you to pay attention, to at least give it some time, do your homework, and yeah, definitely, it does make a difference.
That's wise words. Beautiful. Thank you. So ASEA's products are not intended to treat or diagnose, treat or cure any condition. They actually empower cellular communication and cellular function. So we asked anyone on the call tonight or anyone watching this to please get back to the person who invited you to watch this presentation, and they'll let you know how you can get started and have your own Redox experience. Thank you so much. We've got time for 1 or 2 questions if there's any questions before we stop the recording. I'll just read the chat. Jenna says, inspirational testimony, Karen. Thank you for inspiring us, Karen. Thank you, says Laurie. Thank you immensely, Karen, for taking the time to tell your story. That's wonderful.
What levels, Karen, was your husband on towards the end of his journey?
Initially, we were just doing, you know, the 60 mils in the morning, 60 mils at night. But once we got the diagnosis with the rogue cells in his pancreas, we got super scared. We had a 3-way call with Debra and Justin and Nicole, and we realised, oh my goodness, we need to really, really up the dose. What we were doing was not adequate. And so we really upped the dose. And, you know, I've seen testimonials where people are taking a bottle a day. Personally, I wish that we had done that for his.
Okay, so when you up the dose, what did you up the dose to?
We were attempting to do half a bottle a day. And he definitely noticed a big difference. But personally, for his particular condition, I feel we need do a bit more than that.
Okay, so on half a bottle a day, was it during that time that his liver results came back perfect and his bloods were good? So it was during that time. So how long was he on half a bottle a day for?
I would say, I'm trying to remember. I don't even think it was a month. Yeah.
Okay. And
he passed away very quickly. You know.
Okay. And how long had he had? Over what period of time, years, did he have his condition?
He had rheumatoid. He had this inflammatory condition in his joints for like 9 years. So he had that for a very long time, but the actual diagnosis of the rogue cells in the pancreas, he had only had that for maybe a month and a half.
Okay, so that diagnosis was a month and a half prior to him passing on?
Yeah.
Okay, so
maybe two months he passed.
So up until then, you didn't know the extent of the rogue cells. You were putting it down. No. Up until then, it was a diagnosis of an inflammatory condition that he had.
Correct.
Which didn't really escalate your concerns to up the levels. Okay, so I get that. So once you learned what his more severe condition was, that's when you upped those levels. And prior to that, he was on just a maintenance, what, for 12 months, for 6 months, for how long?
He wasn't regular with it, I'm sorry. He was very, I mean, I would love to say that we were very consistent with, supplements and that sort of thing, but he wasn't, No,
but this is really good feedback, because there's a lot of people just like that. And I just want to emphasise that the recording of what you're saying is so important for people to acknowledge that you can have underlying issues happening, that it doesn't it gets to a point where all of a sudden it becomes a diagnosis. And so, you know, sometimes you need to double dose or triple dose just to get on top of your immune system. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. You know, it wasn't until, you know, that horrible awareness that he had this going on in his pancreas that we realized just how severe things were. And that was when we upped the dose to half a bottle. And prior to that, it was intermittent. You know, he wasn't feeling well, and I'd be saying, "Come on, take some more of this." You know, but yeah, it wasn't until the fear, I guess, set in, the realization that we really made that commitment. And that's what I'm saying. I wish we'd made that commitment a lot earlier, because I saw the difference after we made the commitment. I saw the difference it made.
Yes.
So had we made that commitment a lot sooner, and if we had also taken a lot more off, because, you know, that is one of the most severe conditions of rogue cells, you know, migrating, and I just wish we had done a lot more, a lot sooner. Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Whilst it's an inspirational story, it's a very tragic, sad story, and my sincere condolences to you in your major loss, and I just really want to thank you on behalf of all of us, and I know Deb's going to do that as well, for taking the courage to actually speak to us with such clarity and such heartwarming, you know, empathy, to want to get this message out to others, you know, for our sake. So thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like courage, you know. For me, it just feels like I know that this made a difference for him, and I just want to share that with other people, and that's it, you know.
And that's the main message. It's just wonderful of you to take the time. Thank you. Thanks, Deb, for allowing me to ask that question.
That's appreciated, Janice, and it's helped clarify things, but we are out of time, so I'm just going to stop the recording.